All right, what's up, guys? So today, Piers literally just released it. He's gonna have a bunch of people come on and react to his interview with Nick Fuentes. So we're basically just gonna react to him, his people he's bringing on, reacting to his interview they did with Nick Fuentes. I don't know why that was so complicated for me to think about. That was super easy to say. But yeah, I'm gonna start pretty 5 minutes into it. He's basically just gave a monologue about what happened and showed some clips of what happened. So we're basically just gonna start at like the 6 minute mark.
Of the Jews and so on. Now, he's angry about this story being shared because, in fact, he shared himself. It wasn't a game or a trick to question Nick Fuentes about the words of Nick Fuentes. That was the whole point of the interview. Well, I'll be joined by a stellar panel in a moment. We'll begin with Dr. Phil, host of The Real Story. Dr. Phil, great to have you back on Uncensored, as always. What do you make of Nick Fuentes?
I haven't really, I haven't watched Dr. Phil since I was like a little kid. So, with the Catch Me Outside chick, Bahad Baby. I think he's going to say, like, I don't even know what he's really going to say. I don't know. He doesn't seem like, he seems more like a centrist. I think Dr. Phil's more of a centrist. I think he might say that he's like controversial and he has like controversial opinions, but he's probably going to say he's a product of the current society that we created through a lot of liberalism and wokeism. I think that's probably what he's going to say.
Well, a lot. And I first have to say, I commend you for doing this interview. I know some people say, why would you platform this person? I think it took courage for you to put him on. And I'm glad.
Yeah, I've been seeing it through a lot of these mainstream news people that's saying, like, why would you platform Nick? I mean, Nick is already big. Like, you platforming him doesn't. I mean, yes, it does bring him on, or when you bring him on, it does put him out into an audience that he necessarily wouldn't have had unless you brought him on. But he's already big. Like, the people, I would say the people that are watching him. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. I personally don't think that these mainstream people, when they bring him on, that he's not going to really gain any followers. Like, the people he already has in his camp are always going to be in his camp. The people that are never going to be in his camp are never going to switch over and join his camp just because they see him on a new mainstream news. Yeah.
That you did, because if there's not an adult in the room to ask the hard questions and hold these type of voices accountable, then they just run unchecked.
Right.
And you saw what happened here. I spent a lot of time doing trial science work in the litigation arena, and we always say your story goes a lot better if you're the only one telling it. And that's what people mean when they talk about echo chambers and living in a bubble. And what you did was hold him accountable for what he says.
Right.
And of course, that's not near as much fun when a narcissist is not in a room full of people that are nodding along with them. And you just said, listen, I'm not going to introduce anything new here. I'm going to ask you about what you said and let you explain what you said. And there was no ambush here. He could have predicted with great accuracy what you were going to ask. You just asked it in a very critical thinking sort of way, and that was very uncomfortable for him because someone was holding him to account. And thank you for doing that. Because his opinions that he's spreading are ugly, they're corrosive, they're deeply un-American, and that's the psychology of extremism. I think that he is not empowering young men, he's manipulating them. And Piers, I'm going to take a breath here in a minute and let you comment on what I'm saying, but this is the same algorithm that social media uses. If people like something, they click a little bit. If you can get them worked up about something, they click a whole lot. And that's the same strategy as the algorithm that makes social media so toxic. And that's what he does. And you called him out on that in a very transparent and fair-minded way. You let him tell his story, but you ask about some of the key points.
Yeah, and what was really interesting was I don't think he expected that anecdote about his father to come out so early, or if at all. So he looked a bit taken.
Yeah, I did watch the interview that Piers did with Nick. Honestly, I think Nick was getting a little bit emotional, at least about that question. I mean, I understand that, like, he said his father has a normal job and he's not here to defend himself, obviously, but you still said it. And Piers, he's not necessarily, like, he's not ambushing you, he's not attacking you. He really was just asking you, like, is this where you get your mindset from for who you are, from when you said this, from what your dad said that we won't go here because of these particular type of people are here. Like, it does make sense why he asked it, and I do think Nick was getting a little bit emotional about that. I will say though, Pierce did mess up when he was like making fun of him for being a virgin. Like, okay, like he's religious, like he's Catholic, and I think Pierce is also some denomination of Christian, so Pierce kind of looks stupid when he was like trying to make fun of him for being a virgin. Like, that didn't make any sense. So
back, and the reason I asked it was very specific. I said to him, in all my experience of interviewing people, and you've interviewed as many as I have, Phil, if not more, I really do believe that the vast majority of people are a product of their environment. And if Nick Fuentes, through his own story about his parents there, and particularly his father, if he grew up in an environment of overt racism, with his father saying, I'm not taking you to certain restaurants because they're associated with black fare, then you can begin to understand why he himself has become overtly racist and indeed is proud of it. So to me, it was a very relevant question. But again, it can't be an ambush if all I'm doing is asking him about a story he himself put in the public domain.
Well, he did introduce it into the public domain with great fanfare and having a great time doing it. Look, the most powerful role model in any child's life is the same-sex parent. They write on the slate of who their children are, and they start doing that from a very early age. And they write on the slate emotionally, socially, in terms of values, thinking process. So you're quite right to bring that up. If you want to know who someone is, you need to look at from whence they came. And that doesn't mean they don't have a chance to alter that when they get other worldviews, but certainly that's a relevant subject matter that he introduced. He just introduced it when no one was calling him out or questioning him about it. And it was interesting to me how quickly he put on the victim hat and started retreating. I thought it came across as very whiny, immature, insecure, and inadequate. And he said he was a racist. He said he was an incel. He used that term. He introduced that. And, that's defined as very misogynistic and resentful and blaming of others, blaming women, blaming minorities, blaming Jews. He's blaming so many other people, which is strange for someone that's in a leadership position to try to do.
I asked him about his own sex life, right? Because it seems to be relevant, because of this whole belief that he runs a group of incels, who are involuntary celibates, supposedly. And this is how the exchange went down. Are you actually attracted to women?
I am attracted to women.
You're not gay?
No. But I will say that women are very difficult to be around.
Okay.
So there's that.
And do you think they should have the right to vote?
I do not. No, absolutely not.
They should stay at home?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So basically, you're just a misogynist old dinosaur, aren't you? For a young guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm the
Yeah.
boomer. I know I'm the boomer here, but actually, you're a 27-year-old dinosaur, aren't you? Aren't you, Nick Fuentes? All women.
I am.
All women are annoying. All women grow
fossil.
old. They all get fat. Says the guy. Have you ever had sex?
Yeah, like, bro. Oh my god, like you could tell, like I don't know. I don't know if like Pierce is actually triggered. I mean, I've never actually seen Pierce get triggered before, but like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, I'm trying to think of how to describe it. Like I think I've experienced this before, but like I think I've only experienced this type of like, so like, say like, I don't even know how to like give a good example of this. Like, yeah, I don't know. I really think about it, but basically, yeah, this is it's kind of stupid. What Pierce is like about to make fun of Nick for. Like, it's really stupid.
No, absolutely not.
Wow. Says the guy who's never got laid.
Yeah, that was stupid.
That's
Wow.
the thing, though. You boomers, it's
Do you think
always
you're an
get
expert in
laid,
women?
free love.
Given you've never got laid?
Yeah, we are going back to the Stone Age. You're absolutely right. This, you're talking about empathy, and your kids are empathetic, and they would never laugh at a joke about the Holocaust, and you're a misogynist. You're a simp yourself. You're totally henpecked. That's the problem.
Bro.
And what was interesting, Philly, he went on to admit he'd never been in love, never had any meaningful relationship with a woman, and yet he's so misogynist in his rhetoric about women, so demeaning about them. You know, I talked there earlier in the interview, which is why I referred again, about how he'd said on his show that women, the trouble is they're not just annoying, they get old, they get ugly, they get fat, and so on. Now, really demeaning, horrible language about women, but not difficult to work out why he would feel this way if he's never had any real interaction with them. Every so often, there's a piece of cinema.
I think it's pretty easy. He's just using. Well, obviously, he's probably been around women. He has a mom. I think he said he had a sister. He went to school, so I'm sure he's been around women. He's probably had girlfriends, but he's like, obviously never done anything with them. I guess sexually wise, but like, I'm sure he knows. I'm sure he knows this. And even if he never was around women or he never had a mom or a sister, I'm sure he can just like critically think about it and like watch it himself. Like, I don't know, maybe he can watch his friends talk about it. Maybe he can go on the internet and like watch street interviews, or like, I don't know, like there's multiple ways to figure out why he has that mindset. It's not really like just out of nowhere. Like, but I'm gonna skip this ad. Like, let's see.
Well, it's very transparent. And I mean, these go back to some of the oldest parables in the world. You're talking about sour grapes here, and this is someone that has gotten into a comfort zone where he doesn't interact, he doesn't have relationships that call on him to engage in meaningful conversation with women, learn what they're about and who they are. It's easy to sit up in the cheap seats and criticize. And of course, we know the talent pool in this world at every level. If we took women out of the talent pool in this world, we would be crippled so bad. Look at what's happening in medicine, technology.
Wait, what did he say?
So many areas that, and of course, we know the talent pool in this world at every level. If we took women out of the talent pool in this world, we would be crippled so bad. Look at what's happening in medicine, technology, so many areas that if you look at the enrollment in universities right now, women have eclipsed men. He is so uninformed in his views, and the problem is you get in these cult-like communities where you get people that maybe haven't had a good role model in their lives, and have someone like him who can be entertaining, can be charismatic. He's a nice looking young man.
Well, I mean, what Dr. Phil is saying is like, honestly, it's kind of stupid because this new era of like, I guess you could say women getting educated and like having all the rights of men has only been a thing for what, since the 50s, 60s. So like Nick's worldview is actually like traditional and has always been like that. This is actually something new that hasn't even been around, not even for 100 years, and like it hasn't even been tried and tested really to know if it will even succeed. Like, how would you know if we're even successful? Which honestly, I don't think is really that successful, since birth rates are declining, people are not having kids, people are struggling to buy houses, debt is high, like people can't live like the normal middle class lifestyle that they used to 70 years ago, just living off one income. Well, 70 years ago and all the way back, like being able to live off one income, like, yeah, I guess, yeah.
And people, young men will follow that if they don't have good father figures in their own life. In the absence of real leadership, they'll follow almost anyone if they present well, and that's a problem. And mothers and fathers, families need to be asking, what can I do to fortify my young men against this kind of exploitation? And that's why people should be standing up and applauding you, exposing with great transparency what's going on here with this Nick Fuentes phenomenon.
Well, all I wanted to do, honestly, was to work out whether it was all performative or whether he really believes a lot of the things that he says. And by the end, I concluded he does actually believe a lot of this stuff. And
I think he does. I think he believes some of it.
But what I wasn't expecting, Phil, which I was really quite shocked by, and it takes a lot to shock me, but the sheer volume and venom on social media of his so-called groypers, these young men that adhere to his every word, who he kind of unleashes on people. It was unbelievably brazen in its misogyny, in its racism, in its anti-Semitism. It was some of the most vile stuff I've seen in a long time, and it was relentless and has carried on. And targeting me, targeting members of my family, whatever. I don't care. I'm used to it. I've had a lot worse, actually, than this. They remind me of a bunch of mean boys at school. And, obviously I'm 60 years old. It's not going to wash the sides.
Mean boys at school?
However, it was noticeable to me that they were almost to a man, young, male, misogynist, racist, and anti-Semitic, and view everything he says as sacrosanct. This is a kind of brainwashed world. The only question I don't know is how much of them are genuine human beings and how much maybe, as has been reported today in the New York Post, foreign bots that are unleashed because they analyze the speed of reaction to stuff that he posts, and they've worked out a lot of it comes from overseas, and a lot of it may be bots, actual robots doing this stuff.
These bot farms now, there was a time when people would use these bots and they would deploy them by the hundreds. But now our research shows that these bot farms, a lot of them out of Russia and some other foreign countries, are deployed in the tens of thousands. And what happens is they start kind of a zeitgeist on the internet, and then others, real people, see that, and then they start jumping on the bandwagon. And so it can drive a social media kind of think it can drive social media to appear that it's thinking a certain way. But I'm sure in the middle of that, he has followers that do echo what he's saying. And it's whiny, it's immature, it's insecure, it's highly transparent. And you wonder what's going to happen to these young men if somebody doesn't force them into some critical thinking where they say, listen, what's the end result here? Where does this lead me in my life? As opposed to opening themselves up to some real interaction and some real critical thinking where they say, what do I want? What's my goal in life? Do I want to have a family? Do I want to have children? Do I want to have a meaningful career where I can fit into a fully functional society? And if they stay on this path, they're going to be lonely, depressed, anxious, inadequate, with a false sense of superiority that is very, very empty, very, very meaningless. And I hate that. I hate that for these young men, because he is misleading them. He's not empowering them. He is misleading them.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've got 3 sons of 32, 28, 25. And I'd be horrified if they behaved like that. Horrified if they had those attitudes and views. Horrified if they were so dismissive of things like the Holocaust. Horrified if they spoke about women that way. Horrified if they were brazenly admitting to being racists and openly admitted they'd avoid black people in case they get attacked and so on. All of it was actually quite disturbing.
Well, it is. But think about all of these young men that are seemingly ascribing to his mindset. Think about what they're being cheated out of. Think about all the joy and pleasure and fulfillment that they're actually getting cheated out of if they stay this course. I mean, think about all the joy you've had with your kids, all of the rich relationships you have with female colleagues that would be off the table. Think about everything that's missed.
Well, joining me on the panel now is Warren Smith, critical thinker and founder of the Secret Scholar Society, Andrew Wilson, host of The Crucible, Mark Lamont Hill, host of Bet News, and influencer Harry Sisson. And also joining us a little later will be Glenn Greenwald. All right, Harry Sisson, we're in the unique position, I believe, where you and I may have a slight agreement here about all this. So what was your view of the Fuentes interview?
Piers, I don't think it's a slight agreement. I think it's a full agreement. First and foremost, I do want to start off by saying I thought the way that you conducted the interview was fantastic. I watched the entire thing, and you I think, were the only interviewer so far to really hold Nick Fuentes accountable and not let him get away with a lot of his hateful views. I loved how you played the clips side by side and made him defend it on the record. So I want to give props to you there. I thought it was really well.
Honestly, I mean, when Nick gets interviewed by other people, they're not necessarily letting him get away with it. It's like, there's really no point in asking it, in my view. It's like, why am I just going to ask useless questions? I want to find out, like, they want to ask, like, questions that they really want to know about him, not, like, necessarily what he says. Like, the reason why Harry agrees with him is because Piers kind of, like, went after him a little bit and tried to make him look bad for what he says, and other people are just interviewing him just to get to know him and, like, really just find out, for him to explain his ideas and not trying to make him look bad just from comments, if that makes sense.
And I watched the entire thing, and I was trying to decide, similar to you, does Nick Fuentes actually believe these things, or is he doing it for the money? Is it performative?
Not for the money.
I might disagree slightly with you. I think it's both. I think he does believe some of these things, and I think some of it's performative. I think when he tried to moderate himself, that's performative. But the more hateful views that, as you mentioned, when the mask kind of slipped, that's what he truly believes. You could tell that he was trying to moderate himself when, as you were talking about with Dr. Phil, talking about the Holocaust. He said, I believe it was the Holocaust, at least 6 million Jews. He said that, but then simultaneously claimed that Hitler is cool and that he liked his uniforms and the music and things like that.
He was joking.
I mean, I think Nick Fuentes broadly is a sad, insecure man. I think he's a liar. I think he's a grifter. And I think you exposed that in the interview.
Did you just say he's a grifter? How is he a grifter? That doesn't even make any sense. What the hell is this dude talking about, bro? Literally, Harry got caught, like, messing around with multiple chicks, but stated that, like, he cherishes women and, like, he will never take advantage of them, but then here he is taking advantage of them. Like, that, bro.
Drew Wilson, what did you think?
Well, I was just watching your previous segment, and I thought that the framing there was a little off. So I've always appreciated coming on the show and letting me get my viewpoints out. But I do take some issue with your framing. you did bring up the guy's dad and you said his name.
Yeah.
And when you said it on the air that way, this is a person who has had people attempt to assassinate him. They have come to his house, shown up at his door, and tried to kill him. And that's on video happening. And so when you said the guy's name and then try to tie it into racism, I know that you know this, Piers, but the left broadly will do these harassment campaigns. These harassment campaigns are designed specifically to incite the violence of many of their mentally ill followers.
Andrew, let me just say,
and that's what they do.
Yeah, let me just say, if I had my time again, I wouldn't have said his father's name, but I would have still told the anecdote because I thought it was really important to Nick Fuentes.
The anecdote's not the relevant part.
But the
I'm
anecdote is relevant.
Yeah.
The anecdote is relevant when he immediately tried to attack me for ambushing him with a story that he told himself on his show. I mean, look, if I told a story
But
like that...
that's not what people are upset about.
No, I understand. Listen,
they weren't upset about the anecdote. They were upset that you specifically said the guy's name after Fuentes has had these assassination attempts on him.
To be clear, if I had my time again, wouldn't have said his father's name, notwithstanding the fact you can find it in 2 seconds on the internet. Right? So it's not like it's not difficult to find. But I do think it's important that anecdote, to me, was potentially very relevant to why Nick Fuentes is the way he is about racism, for example, because he was telling a story that cannot be construed, Andrew, any other way than his father was directing them away from restaurants because of his racist views about the people that go in them or run them. And it couldn't be seen any other way.
I get that. I get the point of bringing the anecdote up. But that wasn't what looked to me like what was making these guys so angry, was not the anecdote itself, but the fact that you said the guy's name, referenced it as his dad, and then, this guy's had assassination attempts.
Yeah, but the story was him telling the story.
By the way, hang on. A lot of the first assassination attempt happened because of the "Your Body, My Choice" thing that he put that tweet out, and people began doxing his address and his family's name, and that's why they showed up to kill him. So the guy's grievance there, I think, is legitimate.
Yeah, but I think it's important that his grievance wasn't just that I named his father, which again is a matter of public record. You can find it anywhere. Although I wouldn't have said it if I had my time again, because I don't want to attack his family for the sake of attacking his family. It was when he tried to frame it as an unfair attack on his family, when I think actually the story that he himself put in the...
Yeah, honestly, it wasn't unfair. Really, Piers didn't attack you. I do agree with, I guess they kind of both agree that Piers shouldn't have said his father's name like that, but I understand why Piers brought it up. It's a legitimate reason. So,
domain was potentially very relevant to why he is the way he is. I as a journalist...
Well, how he was framing it was you're bringing this up and name doxing specifically so that you can rally people into a harassment campaign. That's how he saw it.
No, but that wasn't... okay, but just to be clear again, that was not my intention. My intention was to ask him...
I'm trying to think back if... Yeah, I don't think Piers was trying to create a harassment campaign against him for that type, or what he said, the anecdote he gave about his dad. I don't think he really was, honestly. Yeah, I think he was just really trying to find out, did you get your beliefs from your dad? Yeah.
Sincerity. If you grow up in an environment at home where there is clear racism that you have discussed yourself on your own show, very... unarguably, you can't listen to the clip. I played it earlier without realizing that's what he's saying. Then, is that relevant to the way he is? Let me bring in Mark Lamont Hill here. I mean, Mark, I didn't do that lightly. I had decided before I did the interview that I would
just
do a
lights
lot of
a
research
cigarette,
into this.
bro.
I would find all the clips that I felt were the most incendiary things he'd said on the record. And I would ask him and push him.
He's probably drinking
I don't
whiskey
think
or something.
anyone else has really done.
Drinking
And
straight
it'd be
whiskey
interesting
in
to
the
see the
glass.
way he responded. And if you're going to talk to Nick Fuentes, who openly admits to being a racist, he did it again with me in the show. That anecdote to me was pertinent to why he may have shaped those views. What do you think? Was it unfair?
I think the anecdote was entirely fair and necessary, particularly since, the first part of the interview was very much about his biography. It was very much about what shaped him. He himself volunteered information, even in that interview, about his parents, about how they came together, about the loss of their fathers, etc. All that to me is fair game. I agree that invoking his father's name in that moment was too far. I hear you saying if you could do it again, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because I do have some ethical and moral reservations about doxing. I don't think it's wrong, for example, if someone does something awful in public and it's relevant to the public interest to track down their job and notify their job. But that's not the same thing as tracking down every private citizen just because we think they're racist or sexist or anti-Semitic or homophobic. I may think you're that thing, but you have a right to be that thing, even though I think it's awful. And I don't think you should live without safety because of that. Now, there's a bigger question, Piers, that you raised at the top of the interview, and it's come up again in the media, and that is, should you even be talking to this guy?
Right.
And I got to be honest with you, Piers, I've struggled with this. I interview controversial people. I sit down with people who people say don't platform them, and I take seriously your point that they already have a platform. And I'm not making them big. I'm not drawing attention to them. They already have the attention. They're just not being questioned or challenged on that platform. I concede that point. I agree with you fully. The problem with this guy, the problem with Nick Fuentes in particular, though, to me, is he's such a chameleon, and he moves in such a way that I'm not sure holding him accountable matters to his base, and he does just enough to look moderate and normal and reasonable.
Man, if I'm being honest, like, if you bring somebody on that's controversial and it's not gonna like get your channel banned or get a strike or something, like, let your audience choose whether or not they like the guy or they dislike the guy. Like, let the audience choose. Like, you're going in there and you're trying to just give an impartial interview to the guy. Like, you're trying to find out, like, who is this guy? Why is he so popular? Like, who cares, man? Like, and like, people giving you flack for it, like, just be like, bro, shut up. Like, watch the interview. You make your own opinion. Like, that's what I did. That's why I interviewed him. I want to get to know him to figure out why he's so popular, if I actually like him, what points I agree with him on, what I disagreed him on, maybe challenge him a little bit. Like I don't understand, like, what's the big deal, really? Like,
that I think he'll do more damage by sneaking some people from the middle and dragging them to his side because they think he's reasonable, and only later find out that he's a sexist, misogynist, Hitler-loving Nazi, right? Or whatever he is, right? That's where the danger comes for me. I'm not saying we should...
Yeah, so, like, they're scared that if they mainstream him, that people are actually going to realize that he's actually correct. Like, but I understand the point where he's coming from. Like, they want to keep people on their side. But, like, if he's speaking the truth, at least to them, they feel like he's speaking the truth to them, then why are you, like, creating a barrier? Like, I mean, I know why they're creating a barrier, but in my mind, it's like, why are you creating a barrier? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Controversial people. I'm just saying, this particular guy, I feel like we're playing into his interests and his angle.
Yeah, well, Glenn Greenwald, welcome back to Uncensored. You've had Fuentes on your show. What's your view about that issue, about platforming him at all?
Oh, I didn't even consider it to be a difficult question at all. I mean, if you're going to have people on who are responsible for the invasion and destruction of Iraq based on lies, or the incineration of Vietnam, or the destruction of Gaza and the death of tens of thousands of people, and welcome them and treat them like respectable people, tell me what it is that Nick Fuentes has done remotely as bad as that justifies allowing them to come on and speak, but not him. And whether you like it or not, he does speak for a huge number of people in his generation, and even other generations as well, who feel the same kind of anger and frustration with the status quo, with the establishment, with the kind of dogma that we've been told we have to accept. And there's a lot of people who are angry about it, who rebel against it. And we saw this with Donald Trump on maybe a little bit of a smaller scale, but very much the same pattern. When Donald Trump appeared, everybody was like, oh, he's racist and fascist, and he's misogynist, and he's this and that. And no one wanted to grapple with the reason why his message was resonating so much. And to me, it is very similar to Nick Fuentes. Say what you want about him. He's extremely smart. an incredibly talented communicator and very well read. Like, he's very informed. He's not just some sensationalist babbling on the internet. And I think the reason he has attracted a lot of attention is because he's speaking to the anger and frustration, a lot of which is valid, of a lot of people. And to stick your head in the sand and say, oh, we're going to pretend that this isn't happening because his views are too off, but the people who start wars or are responsible for the 2008 financial crisis, these are respectable people who we treat with respect, like Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton or whoever. That, to me, is the kind of thing that I think is really distorted.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, that makes, like, I mean, obviously, like, politics is all about ideas, so they hate platforming or mainstreaming ideas that aren't going to contribute to their narrative or to their goals. So it makes sense why the media doesn't platform them, because they hate ideas that aren't theirs or doesn't agree with theirs, complement their ideas. But yeah, that makes so much sense. Like, I mean, it's the same thing with Charlie Kirk. Like, he didn't hurt anybody. I mean, obviously, he hurt people's feelings and emotions, but like, you're gonna get over that. Like, I mean, I guess if you can't get over that, that's kind of crazy that you can't get over it. He says, like, there's only two genders. Oh, I'm so offended. Like, bro, just get over that. Like, that doesn't hurt you. Like Charlie Kirk never killed anybody. He never tortured anybody. I don't know. He never abused anybody. Like, bro, like, he's not doing anything physically to you. Like, you can get over everything mentally of what somebody says to you. Like, you can get over that shit. Like, it's not that big a deal. But like, physical stuff, obviously it's a lot harder to get over physical stuff because it kind of stays with you, because it's physical and it's mental at the same time. So like, that's understandable why you can't get over the physical part. But yeah, like, I 100% agree. Like, you bring on people that have killed people and like have done some terrible things, started wars and killed, I don't know, tens, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. But then this dude is like the worst thing ever just because of his ideas. Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Warren Smith, I'll bring
respond to that?
Well, no, let me bring in Warren Smith first, and then I'll come back to you, Mark. Warren, that really is my feeling about it. Is that you can let these guys like Fuentes and Andrew Tate run riot, and they do already, and they have massive followings, millions and millions of young men. I know when I interview Tate, the number of young men who just come up to me in the street to ask about it is off the charts, more than almost any other guest I ever have. So we can either pretend this phenomenon isn't happening, and Fuentes is a phenomenon, whether people like it or not. And I don't hate everything about him. There were elements of that interview where it was a genuinely quite interesting conversation. But there were elements which, either because he wanted to be performative and shocking and attention-seeking, whatever it may be, or because he really believes it, where I felt we saw a pretty dark underbelly of some of his beliefs. You know, I mean, just when somebody just says, I am a racist, and then explains, yeah, well, let me play the clip first, then come to you. You're fine with saying you're a racist?
Totally. I think everybody's racist. I think everybody, if we're being honest, is racist. I think everybody, the only people that aren't racist or pretend not to be are white people, to their detriment. Everybody else is racist.
But earlier in the interview, you got aggrieved at the idea that your father was a racist. You wanted to make emphatically
because
sure
my father's...
All right, let's look up the definition of what is a racist. What is a racist? I can't spell it, man. If you guys didn't notice, I can't spell. Someone who believes one race is superior to others, leading to prejudice, discrimination, and antagonism against people of different races, often based on stereotypes, slurs, and actions that create systemic disadvantage affecting individuals and institutions. So, I know Nick says he doesn't believe white people are superior to other races. At least I'm pretty sure that's what he said on Piers Morgan show, that he doesn't think they're superior. I mean, he says they have higher IQs, and we looked it up in the past video. They do have higher IQs than some of the races, so he's not being racist there. That's actually a fact. But I guess, I mean, I understand where he's coming from because, like, personally, I'm not going to go out at night because I know it's dangerous. And, well, I'm not even going to go down that road. I'm not even big enough. I'm not big enough yet to incriminate myself. Maybe if I get bigger, I'll say something more crazy. But right now, no, I'm not even big enough. I work a normal job. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, we're gonna continue.
He's not.
Because my father doesn't share my same views on that.
So he's the exception to the everyone's a racist.
Well, everybody's a little bit racist.
I mean, I thought it was an interesting contradiction there, which he was probably calculating in real time, that having got so exercised about the idea that his father was racist, he then said everyone's racist and there's nothing wrong with it, effectively. But putting that to one side, Warren, I mean, you know, this issue of whether you platform somebody like Fuentes, who has these inflammatory views, I think we can all agree they're inflammatory, a lot of his views. You know, am I, by doing it, am I continuing to fuel this phenomenon in a way that is a negative for society? Or in a free democratic society, you know, should I be entitled to interview who the hell I like, as long as I do my job as a journalist of holding him to account over these things, let other people work it out for themselves?
I agree with that.
I think it's totally understandable, and I agree that you would have him on. I was in the same position where I was genuinely shocked when I made a knee-jerk response video to something he had said. I was overwhelmed by the response. I was like, I had no idea there were this many people out there that agreed with him. And I had people that I knew actually telling me, no, you're oversimplifying this. And I actually went back and looked at the same clip and realized I had oversimplified it. There was actually, I was looking at it through the narrative, going into it without much prior research. And that actually led to me sitting down with him for an hour and a half. I think it's important, though, if you want to achieve the ideal outcome, it is important to actually genuinely be trying to gain a better understanding of his reasoning and in his arguments, and not just trying to win or embarrass, because in the long run, I think that will backfire and that will cause him to become bigger.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. You know, people were asking me, you know, he won, or people said you won. Or I said, look, I didn't seek out to win. I don't seek out ever to win an interview. That's not.
Well, he did try to win when he was calling him a virgin, making fun of it. You were trying to win, so he's lying on that one. But I agree. Like, you push back on their ideas, like you win by showing them that their point of view and their ideas or their logic, it doesn't make sense. Basically, that's basically what you should do when you're challenging somebody and trying to figure out why they think that way.
Point of an interview, actually. What I wanted to do over 2 hours was personally get to know him better, because I know nothing about him other than what I've read. I've never met him, I've never interviewed him, and B, to go over all these things which he's notorious for and actually work out the correct context, what he really believes, what may have motivated this, and so on. And I think a lot of that was achieved in the interview, but it wasn't, you know, I think it very quickly afterwards, you know, when I asked him during the interview, you know, how he felt towards the end, how he felt had gone, he thought I'd been fair. He didn't think I'd ambushed him and so on. He made that clear in the interview. And yet afterwards, almost immediately afterwards, he comes out full bore on the attack, which is what he does. But it was interesting to me that it was the reaction from his sort of mob of groypers was instantaneous and extraordinarily widespread. They just come as this mob. And it's you know, if you're not me, who's got a very thick skin, it's a pretty hard thing to get back at you. Look, I don't care. I've had a lot worse, and they'll move on, and that's what happens. But if you're not, actually, it can be very intimidating. It's very threatening, very racist, very anti-Semitic, very very nasty. Actually, like I said, it didn't you know, it wouldn't scrape the surface with me because I got a skin of 1,000 rhinos. But to other people, I could see it really being a pretty terrifying experience.
Hey, Piers, can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
They're doing that. They're doing that too.
Sorry, we will Glenn go first. Yeah.
Go me and George, because it's really for
Hang
everybody.
on, guys. Don't talk at once. Let me start with Glenn.
Thanks. Mark, I'm sorry to interrupt. But the issue is, why does he have such a loyal following? Why does he have such a large and loyal following? Now, you can ask that question about Donald Trump, and a lot of people are satisfied by saying, oh, America's just filled with racists and misogynists and xenophobes, and he's playing into that. And maybe that is part of it. You know, politicians do demagogue and play to our worst instincts always, but there was a lot more to it than that. And I think people understand 10 years later that there is and was a lot more to that. So you can say, oh yeah, Nick Fuentes has this army of angry young men who are incredibly devoted to him, who believe that he's speaking truth uniquely, because they're also a bunch of Nazis and racists and Jew haters. And okay, that's an easy. I think there's a lot more to it, and I think people ought to grapple with the reason why he's speaking for so many people.
I think that's a very valid point. You know, I've always said about Andrew Tate, for example, that, you know, a lot of the things he says, I can understand. If you're a young, slightly disenfranchised young man, you feel society has got it in for you, and all you ever hear is man bashing. I can understand why you gravitate to a guy like Tate, who stands there tall and proud as a very masculine kind of guy, beating his chest, talking about, you know, taking care of your body and getting fit and being a protector and all these things. I get all that. But then he slides into brazen misogyny, which I hate. Mark Lamont Hill, let me bring you in here. I mean, I just want to, before you say what you want to say, what he said after the interview, Nick Fuentes, was Piers Morgan tried his best, but his hardball interrogation made me look even better than Tucker's wildly criticized softball interview. The regime can acquiesce like Tucker, or it can try to resist like Piers, but the result is inevitably the same total Groiper victory. Now, look, you know, on one level, I admire his social media work, right? He goes on the attack, he gives it full bells, he claims total victory. It's very Trumpian, and it can work, it can be very effective, okay? And he's perfectly entitled to claim total victory and whatever, and I'm sure all his supporters agree. But it's interesting that he views me and Tucker Carlson and other people who now do our own shows, whatever, as the regime. Almost like anybody who's older than him is part of some ancien regime that just doesn't get it. You know, all his supporters called me boomer, right? And I was like, I've been called that probably ever. Okay, I'm a boomer. I don't know what that means, but it just means I'm an old dude who doesn't get it, right? And it may be, as Glenn says, there is a more interesting conversation to be had about why these guys get so popular. And it may be that when I do my slightly old school journalistic trick, as somebody put it, of just being quite tough and rigorous with questioning, that it's viewed by young people who gravitate to people like these guys as just an old boomer going through the motions.
Perhaps. I mean, and also I wouldn't assume that because he said that he believes it, that he actually believes you're part of the regime, or that he believes that when it is softball or hardball. He gives a lot of the characteristics, mannerisms, approaches, styles of a cult leader. And cult leaders navigate their followers in very particular ways, including re-narrating or counter-narrating events that happen in ways that are favorable to them. That's why when I said I struggle with whether or not you should have him on the show, I didn't say you shouldn't, and I didn't say you should. It's a struggle for me. Again, as a journalist, I have interviewed despots, I've killers, you know, people, I mean, genocide leaders, I've done it all. And there are days where it feels very clear and obvious why I should do it. They need to be held accountable. They need to be forced to answer tough questions. And I don't put them in a, contrary to what was said, I don't hold them in a different box than I do Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or someone who I voted for, you know, potentially, right?
Yeah, you do. Yes, you do. Because you would defend Hillary Clinton. What do you say? Hillary Clinton and somebody else? Like, you would defend them. But, like, you wouldn't defend a cult leader. You wouldn't defend Nick Fuentes. So, like, he's lying.
They all need to be held to scrutiny. Everybody in power needs to be held accountable. I'm with that. My concern in this particular case, though, is that I'm not sure what the net gain is. I don't know if you really got to know it better him, not because you didn't do a great job, you did do a great job, but because I'm not sure who the person is behind that persona. And the question I would ask you, Piers, is if you knew...
Then watch his content or interview him. What the hell is this guy talking about?
ahead of time that doing this interview would double the amount of people who believed in the worst things that he believes, would you still do the interview? If you
Well,
knew ahead of time that it would double
I
that
honestly
number,
don't think.
would you-
Bro, like, so like, I'm trying to figure out how to word this, but like, he's basically saying that people are basically sheep and like they can't form their own opinions, which is, I mean, I guess it's true, but like, I don't know how to word it. It's like, I mean, that's basically what he is. That's basically what he's saying is like, he thinks people can't form their own opinion if they see something, see or hear Nick say these things, that they're just gonna go straight to his side and get off the Democratic liberal side. Like, I mean, I guess it's true, but I think a lot of people are probably afraid to necessarily do that, or maybe they'll keep it in secret. Like they'll like have it internally. Like they'll just be aware, like they're changed, but their outside persona will still be the same, basically.
do it?
Well, I don't think that is going to be a consequence of it, honestly. But what I do think is that.
But if it were,
Let me make my point. I don't like generalizing. You know, when Hillary Clinton called Donald Trump supporters, the MAGA supporters, a basket of deplorables, it probably lost her that election. When you generalize about millions and millions of people, it's always a very precarious and stupid folly to do that. What I can say with some certainty is that pretty well 100% of his groypers who've directly messaged me or members of my family have been highly abusive, overtly racist, very misogynist, and many of them anti-Semitic. I can say that with certainty. Now, what I don't know is how many of those are human beings and how many are from a bot farm, because according to reports in the last 2 days, a lot of his stuff comes from bot farms. I don't know if that's true, but that's been reported in various mainstream papers.
I don't doubt it.
And I don't know how representative.
I kind of doubt it.
These ones on
comes from the
X
mainstream, I kind
or
of doubt it.
Instagram are of the total body of his support. I just don't know. So you know, I don't want to generalize and say all.
And neither do I, Piers.
I don't want to say all Nick Fuentes supporters are
to be
disgusting,
clear,
because there may be a lot of people. It's a bit like Tommy Robinson.
And to be
Well,
clear,
let me make my point.
I'm not saying that. To be clear, I'm not.
Let me finish my point.
Oh,
It's a bit like Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson in the UK, right, is a bit like Fuentes over here, and there's no doubt, as the people marching with him have grown bigger and bigger and bigger, the idea that they're all fascist, racist, whatever, is nonsense. A lot of people are marching for well-intentioned reasons connected with the immigration crisis in the UK. Right? He has bad people as well. And I think he's a malevolent character. But again, I wouldn't generalize anymore about all these people that march.
Can I ask you a question, Pierce?
Yes, yeah, sure.
I would like to
But again,
dive
I didn't
into.
generalize.
Well, hang on, let
My
Andrew come in.
hypothetical.
Let Andrew come in.
Okay.
There was a part of the interview where you were very combative, and you said you haven't even been laid and you're a virgin. This guy's a Roman Catholic.
Right.
Isn't he supposed to be a virgin until he's married? Isn't that part of your guys' faith?
To be fair to him, that is. I was brought up a Catholic. I'm not a particularly devout Catholic. I disagree with a lot of the church's
But you do
teachings.
agree that Catholics are supposed to remain
Yes, I do.
chaste
Yes.
until marriage,
Yeah,
right?
the strict interpretation from the Catholic Church about that is you should be.
So how come he didn't get? Shouldn't he get credit for that?
Well, he
like
couldn't,
the idea that he's kind of staying within the confines of his religious beliefs.
I have no problem, but he also.
Or he can't get any action.
But he also self-identifies as an incel, which
Oh,
is more problematic.
here's what Mark just said. You see what I mean? Like, he can't get any action. The guy is rich as shit, and he's a good-looking guy. He could get action if he wanted it,
I'm
Mark.
teasing.
And by the way,
Andrew,
hang on, Mark.
I agree with you, Andrew. I'm just teasing.
Just let me finish the point. Let me
I
finish the
agree with
point.
you.
I'm just teasing.
What I'm saying to you, though, is that yeah, of course he could. The thing is, though, is that if you guys are saying like he's a huckster, he's a fraud, isn't he in fact following rigorously his faith by doing that?
Well, so my response to that, I think it's a
not
really.
what he said
Hang
in the
on,
interview.
hang on, Harry. I think it's
Yes,
a really.
it is what he said in the interview.
I want to respond to Andrew.
No, it's not.
I think it's a perfectly valid question, particularly as I have always said I'm a Catholic. I was raised a Catholic. I had spiritual guidance from Catholic nuns when I was 12 years old. You know, I go to church occasionally. I'm not devout. I'm not there all the time. I don't agree with some of the Catholic Church's views and policies, and I wish they would evolve faster. However, you know,
I disagree with that. Like, evolve with what? Like, what does he mean evolve? Like, evolve with the current progressive society to what? Like, if the Bible gives strict rules and then you're trying to change it just based off of the current society that you live in and not based off tradition, that doesn't necessarily make sense. I mean, he even said he's not a devout Catholic, which explains why he has that idea that it should evolve. Like, no, it actually should stay the way it is, which is traditional. So, like, brother, yeah.
Catholic to Catholic with him, yes, it's a perfectly valid thing that he could say, I am saving myself for marriage. But if that's all he said, fine. But I would argue that, you know, if you look at him as a Christian, for example, how many of his other views are compatible with being a Christian? Right? You
well,
know,
his view on the priesthood, for instance,
racism
was correct.
His Jew baiting, his overt racism, the despicable way he talks about women generally, and so on. None of those things are what you would categorize as being a good Christian. So
I think you can have dogmatic distinctions with him, and that's fine within the confines of the faith. But with the points he brought up, when he said women aren't allowed to be clergy, that's true. They're not allowed to be clergy, yes, by the Catholic faith. And when he said he's saving himself for marriage,
but he also said he shouldn't.
But when he said women, Andrew, when he, but hang on, Andrew, when he said that women shouldn't be allowed to vote and should stay at home, i.e., should also have jobs. Would you agree with that?
The Catholic Church does not have dogmatic teaching on democracy. They're not like, oh, democracy is the standard.
No, I'm
asking you.
I'm asking you whether you think when he says women shouldn't be allowed to vote and should stay at home and not work.
Well, I think most people shouldn't be allowed to vote. I think I would limit suffrage for most people, like our founders did. I think it's a terrible idea to have universal suffrage.
Would you make it specific to women?
Not specific. Not specific.
Hang on. Let me finish this.
Why would that matter?
Well, because I do think if you say
limit voting, yes.
I do think after they've waged a 100-year war, women for women's equal rights, to then remove one of the wrenching building blocks of that, which is what the suffragettes fought for, the right to vote. I think if you remove that...
Oh, come on, that whole movement was totally astroturf, that's one. And
well,
two,
it wasn't on the right
let's
to
just
vote.
point this out. There's a good argument from a Christian perspective to make that the husband, the head of the household, should be the one voting. Within his dogma, that would make sense. So there is a Christian case that you could make for that the head of household, the wife, right now what goes on in Christian households is that the wife is just doubling the vote of the man, right? So this is not against the purview of Fuentes. And it doesn't even sound particularly misogynistic to me.
Okay,
the 19th Amendment,
Harry, what's your response to that? Uncensored is proudly sponsored by Cozy Earth, which, like me, delivers next-level quality and comfort. If I wasn't hosting this show today, I'd be wearing a pet.
I mean, there's so much to respond to right there. I do want to point out that Andrew was talking about, you know, Nick Fuentes is a good Christian. He's being celibate until marriage because of this reason. That's not what he said in the interview. When he was going back and forth with you on this, Piers, he talked about how women are gross and they get fat and they're ugly, and he wouldn't give his female friend a tampon because they're gross and things like that. So Andrew is making an argument for Nick that Nick did not make in the interview. Nick Fuentes is just an open misogynist who has spent far too much time in his basement alone, festering online and getting involved in his own conspiracy theories that he's creating. There's nothing, or at least via his own words in the interview, he did not present it as a case of him being religious and him staying perfectly to the religious text. Now, no,
yes, he did. I have the quote.
Go watch the viral clip. Wait, Andrew, go watch the back and forth with Piers. Go watch the back and forth with Piers when he asked. Andrew, please be quiet. Go watch the back and forth with Piers in that specific instance where Piers asked him, "Why are you a virgin? Have you slept with anybody?" And yes, go watch the clip. Fine, let the record speak for itself. You can go watch the clip if you'd like. That's what he said.
No, you said he didn't give a reason.
The entire interview. Andrew, can you please be quiet? Can you just sip it for a second?
Why don't we watch the exchange again and clarify?
Let's do it.
Are you actually attracted to women?
I am attracted to women.
You're not gay?
No. But I will say that women are very difficult to be around.
Okay.
So there's that.
And do you think they should have the right to vote?
I do not. No, absolutely not.
They should stay at home?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
See, basically, you're just a misogynist old dinosaur, aren't you? For a young guy. I mean, I know I'm the boomer. I know I'm the boomer here, but actually, you're a 27-year-old dinosaur, aren't you? Aren't you, Nick Fuentes? All women.
I am.
All women are annoying. All women grow old. They all get fat. Says the guy. Have you ever had sex?
No, absolutely not.
Wow. Says the guy who's never got laid. Wow.
That's the thing, though. You boomers, it's always
you're an expert
get laid,
in women,
free love.
given you've never got laid?
Yeah, we are going back to the Stone Age. You're absolutely right. This, you're talking about empathy, and your kids are empathetic, and they would never laugh at a joke about the Holocaust, and you're a misogynist. You're a simp yourself. You're totally henpecked. That's the problem.
Bro.
So he doesn't actually Andrew, mention the reason that you've given.
Not in that clip, but he did mention that he,
So if it's so important to him, why didn't he say it?
Supposed to be chased.
If it's so important to him, why didn't he say it right there? Why didn't he say it right there? Because his reasoning right there was women are gross and they get fat and things like that.
Yeah.
Wait, no, but if this is so...
What is Harry's argument? Well, why didn't he say it in that part? What? Bro. Oh, my God.
Cherry reason. That's a cherry picked.
No, Andrew. If that's his reason doesn't change in 5 minutes. He doesn't go from, oh, I'm a Catholic, I'm staying true to my religion, to, oh, well, women are gross and that's why I don't do it. Wait. You just said that his religion is the main reason as to why he's celibate. So now it was the main reason 5 minutes before, and then it fast forward to 5 minutes later, and he's like, oh, well, women are gross.
That doesn't mean he can't have multiple reasons and a primary reason.
It's just such an important reason that he didn't bring it up again. That makes total sense. He just brought up an entirely different reason.
Okay, so that was his first reason.
Into his misogynistic
that was his first
views.
reason because it was the most important reason.
But in that interaction, he didn't say anything about religion. And if it's his central view, if it's so central to who he is that he bases his misogynistic views off of,
well, the other thing, if I could jump in, the other thing, we bring.
Come on, don't crash out like you did on that podcast, man.
Hang on, let me bring Glenn back in. The other argument, which I thought was interesting, and I thought I missed a bit of a trick here with him, was when he was talking about the Holocaust, where people have assumed he's a Holocaust denier because of things he said in the past, of trivializing it and questioning the number of people who've died and so on. He seemed to try and take a more moderate position, which was, yes, I believe 6 million Jews were killed, maybe more. Whether he meant that or whether he was being some sort of satirical.
He was satirizing you. He was satirizing that.
That's what I now believe was probably happening. Yeah. So I suspect he was.
Yeah.
But regardless, his argument was it all happened so long ago. Why did Jews continue talking about the Holocaust? We've all moved on. They use it all the time as a political weapon and so on. And of course, I suppose the obvious question for him, I went and checked afterwards how many times he's talked about, for example, on his show, the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, which was over 2,000 years ago, right? He does it all the time. So, if I'd been smart in the moment as a fellow Christian, I would say, well, hang on, but isn't that exactly what Christians do all the time about the crucifixion? What's the difference?
Sounds like his religion does matter to him.
Because it's absolutely central to their religion. And I think, I do think so much of what your interview with Nick Fuentes highlighted was extreme generational differences. It was sometimes like watching two people speak different languages. Piers, you and I are kind of the same age. You're obviously older. Everyone can see that, but just a little bit. And, for people who were born in like the 60s, the Holocaust was just 20 years before. World War II had just ended 20 years before. There was a mythology about the United States, about our role in the world, about how great of a country we were, about all the great things we did, about the Holocaust, the unique evil. Now it's 75 years ago. And people who are next generation, or Harry's, were born in, 2000 and 2002. And this idea that the Holocaust has been weaponized. We've been beaten over the head with it for 8 decades. We've been forced to spend and pay huge amounts of money in reparations, or that slavery is sometimes weaponized that way. This is a very common view. So I think when he's doing things like making jokes about the Holocaust, it's not because he thinks it's funny that huge numbers of people were exterminated. I think it's a way of purposely being transgressive about orthodoxies and pieties that a lot of people in his generation don't accept. But Glenn,
hang on. There was a callousness to it. And I'll tell you why. I brought on a guy called Danny Finkelstein. He's a top journalist for the Times newspaper over here, who wrote a very powerful book about his family and their horrendous experience at the hands of Hitler and Stalin. And it's incredibly powerful. It's very moving. It's informed his life. And I'm going to talk to Danny actually after we finish this, because he's been on the receiving end of the most appalling abuse in the last 48 hours, all directed by Nick Fuentes. who was so dismissive of him, talking about his mother and father, so just callous in the way he responded. It's that kind of utter devoidness of any empathy whatsoever. You can have a view that we should try and move on generationally from these seismic moments, okay, but you don't have to be so callous towards somebody whose family literally got murdered by people like Hitler and Stalin, do we? I mean,
But the idea, Pierre, I think the thing is like this generation of people grew up in the wake of the Iraq War, in the wake of endless war, in the wake of the destruction of their financial security with the 2008 financial crisis, with all the lies of COVID and Russiagate and all the rest of it. And faith and trust in these institutions have collapsed. So when they look at people who represent institutional thinking and they're told you're not allowed to make fun of this and you're not allowed to talk about this and except in the ways that we prescribe.
Yeah, honestly, I agree with that. Yeah, like, I like to form my own opinion. I mean, if I'm not being like, bro, like, if I'm not being like racist or like, I don't know, all the isms, I guess. If I'm not being any of the isms or the, I don't know, isms, discrimination, like stuff like that, like, I should be able to have my own opinion and like not get in trouble or fired because we have different opinions. Right? Like, I'm not saying anything hateful at all or violent at all. Like, people can have their own opinion about something and then be able to live their life completely fine. Yeah.
We're going to call you all these names unless you affirm all these pieties over and over and over again. One of the ways of rebelling against that is to say, you know, and it's a very common generational reaction is to say, F you, we're going to transgress every line that you told us we can't because we hate you. We think that the things that you're doing have been destructive to our lives. And I think, like, ignoring that part of youthful transgression, which is very common.
You know what, Glenn? I think it's a very valid point, and there may well be a generational thing to this. Let me bring in Warren. Just for the record, by the way, Andrew, we've just been through the whole transcript, and he never uses the excuse that you may have heard him do it elsewhere. He talked about clergy, whether women should be allowed to be clergy women and so on, and obviously they can't under the Catholic Church doctrine. But he never uses. He never says his celibacy is for religious reasons.
That's his primary view. His primary view is he's supposed to wait until marriage.
Yeah, no, that may be his view, but he didn't express that view in my interview. Is the point? We've just
very effeminate what Harry just said. I'll take an apology, Dalla. Bruh.
Transcript.
Andrew was just saying, "Oh, I have the quote, and there's no quote."
Well, look, it may. Look, I can't rule out. He hasn't said it elsewhere. And it may be Andrew's heard him say that before. I'm just saying in my interview, he doesn't
sometimes on TV we can just say, you know what, I made a mistake. It's okay to be like, yeah, I got it wrong. I may have heard it elsewhere. Is that
yeah. I like that.
All right, let me bring Warren back in. Look, Warren, you're a critical thinker. You know, Glenn's stopped me in my tracks a little bit and made me think about this, right? Because I think there is probably a generational thing here. And I do think that in a way, maybe Mark's right, that by me interviewing Fuentes, the only real winner at the end of the day may be Nick Fuentes, because none of his supporters, certainly from the reaction I've had, have changed their impression of him one iota. I mean, they just assumed he just landslided me and that was it, and I was an old boomer sent packing. And it may be, as Mark says, that other more moderate people quite like some of the things they heard. I don't know. He is charismatic, he's a good talker, and he's smart and all these things. I don't dispute any of that. From a critical thinking point of view, where does this take society? If people like Nick Fuentes grow ever more popular, what will happen to a whole army of young men here?
If people start to adopt his ideology, I would say, well, I'm trying to figure out how to say this without getting in trouble. I guess, yeah, there'll definitely be more people, obviously, like Nick, yes. But I think there will also be more conservative people. Honestly, I think there will be a more of a resurgence in religion, believing in God, conservative values. Yeah, honestly, I think that's probably just logically, that's literally what's going to happen.
Well, last night I held a focus group to try and get to the bottom of this, and I was with over 30 people. The vast majority, 3 disagreed with the vast majority. And what they were saying things such as, I went into this exchange not expecting to like anything about this guy, but what I saw was Piers not contending with his arguments. I think that's why when you bring up his dad, that's why he gets upset, because he's saying, look, man, I'm here. Let's talk. Why are you talking about my dad? Contend with my logic. It's the same thing when that was his response when you brought on your British friend who told his horrific story, which it's terrible.
Yes.
And you could disagree with his response to it, but I think he's saying, why are you're just telling me what you're saying is bad, but you're not really contending with the argument.
Yep.
I think that is the core problem that has led to this outcome, because you can play these clips. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think he was.
I already said that in the beginning. Yep. You're not challenging his ideas. Challenge his ideas. That's what you need to do.
Surprised by anything that occurred in here. That's another reason that you're seeing the backlash, is because it was exactly what people predicted, largely. But when you play that clip, it's like, okay, yes, that's taken from a large stream. In the past, people evolve, and if you're asking him in that conversation to expand on that, and then he does present logic, what I'm seeing is people say, no, you're saying that now, but you're lying. You're playing this game. You're pretending to be moderate, and now you're mind reading. You're saying, I know what Nick Fuentes thinks more than Nick Fuentes. And I do think it's really important in these exchanges to come at it with that first principle of, I'm going to take the wild approach that I'm going to wipe the slate blank and assume that the person who knows the most about what Nick Fuentes actually thinks is Nick Fuentes. And that seldom happens. And when it does, I saw a vastly different response to my conversation, but I don't think I challenged him any less.
Right. No, sorry. You know what? It's very interesting. It's very interesting. I've been reading. I mean, I read and take note of the more nuanced commentary about it. I don't listen to the Groypers all ranting away or attacking me or my family or whatever.
Yes,
they can
you
do
do.
what they like. They can do that rest of their lives. They couldn't give a damn. But
Yes,
I
you
do
do.
think there's there are interesting arguments to be had about this, because whether we like it or not, he is a phenomenon. He's a growing phenomenon, and young people are gravitating to him. And it may well be for the reasons that Glenn articulated. And how we, the rest of us, deal with this is a really interesting story. But that was a really interesting discussion. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Well, joining me now is Daniel Finkelstein from The Times, who wanted to address the anti-Semitism row with Nick Fuentes. So, Danny, I played a clip you sent me. We discussed this. You sent me like a 90-second video clip to play about your own family's horrific experience at the hands of Hitler and Stalin from your very powerful book. And I've been struck by 2 things. One, his utterly dismissive reaction in the moment. But secondly, the horrible pile-on that's been directed at you in the most mocking, awful manner. What's it been like for you?
So that is a bit distressing. There's no 2 ways about it. But I suppose you have to understand that Hitler would never have come to power in the first place if there weren't a lot of people with that mentality, and that's all he's proving. His own response on the programme was, I think, the only thing that he sort of felt he could do. But I think he made a big mistake. I think he thinks, he lived at large by admitting what, kind of just saying to you, yeah, sure, I'm a racist. Sure, I don't like black people. Sure, I don't want women to vote. Sure, I think the Holocaust is fine. He thinks that he's winning out of that, but actually what he's doing ultimately is marginalising himself. So he does produce, as you've experienced and as I have, this kind of deep reaction where people, interestingly, repeated his jokes. So it was all like a bit of a cult, and I noticed that. And that's not nice to receive, but I think it's worth it in order to try to expose the sort of person he is and to try to isolate him from the rest of the American right, which I'm very concerned about. That's one of the reasons why I wanted you to go ahead and confront him in the way that you did, which I think was very effective, and why I wanted to join in with that. Because I think it's really important that this kind of thinking doesn't go into the mainstream of the right. And he chose the path of deepening rather than widening, and that was a mistake.
Yeah, he did. But it's whether he would see that as a mistake or whether he
chose the path of deepening instead of widening. But then don't they just accuse him like he's trying to be too moderate? Or I don't know if Piers is saying he's trying to moderate his views that way he can appeal to a wider audience. But then he's criticizing him for not going moderate to appear to, what's it called? Appeal to a wider audience. He's going more down in depth to not appeal, to go for the more minority of the people, the more, I guess you can say, extremist people. I don't know, it's kind of weird. Like, I mean, yeah, everybody has their own views of, like, about Nick, obviously. I don't know, it's just kind of interesting to see, like, the different types of, like, oh, he's going too far extremist. Oh, no, he's trying to moderate his views. He's trying to appeal to more people. It's like, which is it? Like, you guys have to make up your mind, like, what he's doing.
As he says, we're a couple of old boomers who just don't get it, who don't understand how young American men are thinking right now, and he's much more aware of how they are thinking about issues.
Calling us boomers is like reconfiguring or rebadging his incredible ignorance and childishness as an asset. In fact, what was obvious is he hasn't got the foggiest clue what he's talking about, and he doesn't know anything about. You know, there was one brilliant bit where he said
he doesn't have any idea what he's talking about. Okay, now that's a lie. Obviously, he knows what he's talking about because he's appealing to lots of people, and that's why he brought him on a mainstream show, and he's been on a bunch of mainstream shows. So maybe he's not correct in what he's saying. I guess everything he's saying is not correct, but he does know in general what he is talking about, or he knows in general what his ideas are and how to explain his ideas in an effective way. So what he's saying is kind of subjective, that he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Hitler was cool. He said, I'm not in favor of genocide. In parentheses, well, you actually are. And so he doesn't really understand anything about it, nor do his supporters. So they kind of dismiss it airily as, you know, a laugh, and who cares what happened all that time ago, and then calls us boomers, as if you or I cared about that.
Yeah.
Right? So yes, it's absolutely true. I've lived quite a bit longer than him in order that I've actually read more books, understood more, and know more of what I'm talking about. So he was sensitive about his own ignorance, and it came out in a kind of bragging way. And then, of course, a load of other people pile on to support that.
I don't think he was ignorant about anything. He knows this already. This is one of the main reasons why he got banned off the internet. He knows this already, so he's not ignorant to it. He just doesn't care. That's really what it is.
They're unbothered by it. But he's made a mistake, which he'll live to regret, even though he's 27 now and hasn't lived very long to regret anything.
He's going to live to regret it? Bro, he was banned when he was 18. He said it. How is he going to live to regret it? He's already been living the regret for, 8 years until he started breaking out this year or last year. Like, he started to break out to the mainstream. What is he going to regret? What's he going to regret? Like, he's not banned anymore. Like, are you guys going to ban him again? I guess you could, but, like, what's he going to regret? Like, what?
And what's happening with the kind of conservative movement in totality in America is fascinating. You're seeing splits within the MAGA movement. You're seeing others now developing, like Fuentes and others outside of MAGA, going very hostile on Trump and so on. You're seeing a lot of stuff going on here. What do you make of it?
So the really fascinating thing is the split between your two interviewees, Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes.
Yes.
Ultimately, that actually is in fact what I'm really interested in producing. Right? Tucker Carlson has gone wild. Some of the things, as you laughed in his face when he said some of the things about the French. His ridiculous point about Poland, not understanding at all, of course we had to enter the war before Hitler invaded us. Any historical account will show that we couldn't trust him or have a deal with him.
And in fact, we had a contractual obligation to help Poland,
and which we went into not simply because of Polish human rights, but because we understood strategically we had to do that. The American, by the way, did not do that and ended up being dragged into the war anyway. So Tucker Carlson's position was ridiculous, but it's not yet Nick Fuentes' position. His position is, I don't know why you British are that bothered about the Holocaust.
Yes.
He's not actually in favour of it, which is the Fuentes position. Driving a wedge between those two things, making Tucker Carlson feel he can go that far, but he can't go as far. He can endorse a lot of cranks, but not Nick Fuentes. That is valuable, and I think has been achieved by his interview with Fuentes, your interview with both of them?
I just had a panel discussion about it where one of the panelists argued quite strongly, I shouldn't have platformed him at all, that actually all you end up doing is helping him grow his movement.
I think that, you and I have to recognise in our different media ways, we don't any longer, because of the way the internet works, have the power just to say, well, there's no one listen to Nick Fuentes.
Yeah.
He's got a platform. It's ridiculous to argue he hasn't got a platform.
I agree.
And I took the view, and I know, some people said this to you before you did the interview. That was not my position. And I think it was vindicated by what happened. It's important to expose what he thinks. We've all got to understand it. It's an important part of the development of the right in the United States, and that may come also to Britain as well. We've got to understand it. We've got to listen to it carefully, see what its weak points are. So one of his clear weak points is cut off all women from supporting his position, right? Well, that's half the population to start off with. So he's making mistakes, and making him talk on the record in a challenging way is part of forcing him to.
Bro, what? I mean, the mistakes is all subjective. It's about who he wants to appeal to. Who does he want to be in his crowd? Who does he want to be his audience? It's not a mistake. If he wants women to be a part of his audience or his crowd, then obviously he would say things to get them part of his crowd. That's subjective. Obviously he doesn't. If he doesn't want women a part of his crowd, then obviously he's not gonna say things to appeal to them. So that's subjective. If he doesn't want them there, then I don't understand the criticism. Obviously you want women in your crowd, you want men and women in your crowd, but that's your prerogative. Obviously it's not his prerogative. So it's all subjective criticism.
Of course he can't see it. If he could see it, he wouldn't have made it.
Yeah.
But he couldn't see it.
Well, Danny, thank you. I hope it wasn't too bruising an experience to
No,
get
it was
involved in that. 'Cause
valuable.
I've had a lot of backlash to stuff over the years. This hasn't been the worst. I've had worse, but it's been pretty ferocious.
No,
I mean, if you
it's
get
quite bracing. I
you
think.
enter the world of
Cool. All right. Well, that's the end of it. They probably going to chit chat for some time. But yep. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you watch the next episode.